On January 3, 2009, a mysterious and pseudonymous stranger going by Satoshi Nakamoto released Bitcoin, and a new system for money was born. And that's the big idea, not just a new money, but a new system for money. But here's the secret that almost no one tells you about. Satoshi didn't invent most of what Bitcoin is. He took the bricks that other geniuses before him had already carved, and he built the oven to bake unbreakable money. Today I want to lay out these bricks for you one by one. Let's start just outside Stanford in Palo Alto. It's 1976, and two electrical engineering researchers, Whitfield Diffie and Martin Hellman, ask a simple question. How do you send a secret without trusting the post office or the government? So they invent a magic mailbox where anyone can put a letter inside the public slot, but only a person with the private key can open it. This is public key cryptography, which today is responsible for the Bitcoin wallet. It allowed users to verify that someone had a private key without having to expose the private key. This was so groundbreaking at the time that the NSA showed up and told them, do not publish your findings. This is for criminals and you are exporting a weapon. But Whitfield and Diffie published anyway, and they said that for decades they were scared, they were paranoid, but they felt it was too important to not publish. And that's the first brick. But how do you prove you were the person that meant to send something to that mailbox? 2 years later, in 1978, three MIT guys, Revest, Shamir, and Adelman, create RSA after their names. They allowed the sender to say, yes, this is really me. And they did this by creating digital signatures. They created proof of a transaction. So the second brick for Bitcoin is laid. Now, the problem was that these transactions left a trail. There was no privacy. Everybody could see what you were doing. So jump over to UC Berkeley in 1982, and a man named David Chaum asked, what if money was like cash? Cash is very private. No one knows where it came from. It's untraceable. So he took the digital signatures from the prior brick and made them blind. He created blind signatures. And this way, someone could send something and prove it's them, but remain hidden. Then in 1989, Chaum built the world's first digital currency company, DigiCash. And so David Chaum gave us anonymous digital cash. But the problem was that he still needed the banks as a trusted source to issue the money in the first place. After many people who were rooting for David Chaum saw his company fail, they said, you know what? No more companies, no more masters. We'll code our own money openly, freely, and available for everyone, completely permissionless. This movement that took place in San Francisco was largely led by cypherpunks Timothy May, Eric Hughes, and John Gilmore. And they decided to put privacy and freedom first. They launched the now infamous Cypherpunks mailing list in 1992. This influenced all of the discussions that eventually led to Bitcoin. This movement was brick number 4. Meanwhile, in 1991, two guys who were not part of the cypherpunk movement, Stuart Haber and Scott Stornetta, tried to solve another problem. They said, how do you prove a digital document existed at a certain date and that it was never changed? Their answer was to link a document to the document that came before that, and to link that document to the one that came before it, thus fusing these documents together in one chain. And thus, if any document or any part of the document was changed, it would break that chain. This cryptographic connection is, of course, known as the blockchain. And this is why Satoshi cites their paper 3 times in the Bitcoin white paper, more than anyone else. So brick 5 is built. Now, all of this sounds good for a single transaction, but what happens when you realize you're gonna have thousands or billions of transactions all at once, and you want computers all over the world to share a 500 gigabyte ledger that they have to keep updating? Well, Ralph Merkle steps in with his Merkle trees to solve this problem. He invents sort of a digital notary that basically compresses and summarizes all of these transactions in a block into one tiny fingerprint. So you can confirm that nothing has been changed in a block of transactions with just this fingerprint without having to have the weight of all of those transactions in a block. This is the Merkle tree. And Satoshi ultimately built the entire Bitcoin block structure around these Merkle trees. So brick 6 is built. Now let's jump over to proof of work for brick 7. And if you're already a Bitcoiner, you think I'm gonna say Adam Back. Yes, but not without first mentioning Cynthia Dwork and Moni Noor. In 1993, these two write a paper for IBM to help deter people people from sending junk or DOS attacks against IBM. They first conceptualized the idea for proof of work, but they leave it there in written form. 4 years later, a young 22-year-old man in London named Adam Back makes this concept work in the real world with his hash cache. This forced users to hash or burn some computer time before sending an email to deter spammers, because this would make it economically unfeasible for bad actors. You can think of it as the invention of the digital postage stamp, where someone has to spend a very small amount of energy to send a letter, but a spammer has to spend a lot to send a ton. Satoshi took Adam Back's idea of proof of work for email and he applied it to money. So brick 7 is done. Then the next 2 bricks probably came the closest to what Bitcoin is today. First, in 1998, a legal scholar named Nick Szabo puts together an idea of digital scarcity that would be mined through proof of work. So his idea is that a money would be mined rather than issued, and he called this BitGold. But he had no solution for decentralized consensus. There was no way to pick which ledger was real if other copies surfaced. Also, his bits of BitGold were non-fungible, which is a bad trait for money. Every money or fraction thereof should be equal and the same as all of the others. Your $20 bill should be no more valuable than my $20 bill. But we have brick 8. Then Wei Dai, a computer science grad up in Washington State, comes along and says, what if everyone keeps the same public ledger and one person is elected to update that ledger whenever there are new transactions? In this way, everyone can hash guess with their computers, spending a little bit of computer time to figure out who is elected to update the ledger. That way no one knows who gets to update the ledger, but everyone gets to try to be elected to update the ledger. And as a reward, they can win a digital unit that may someday have some value. And because of this, Wei Dai solved the decentralized ledger and letting it update in a decentralized manner. This is brick 9. And so these 2 bricks from Nick Szabo and Wei Dai came excruciatingly close to what Bitcoin is today. In fact, 10 years later, on August 22, 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto emailed Wei Dai and said, I'm getting ready to release a paper that expands on your idea. Satoshi also wrote, Bitcoin is an implementation of Wei Dai's B-Money proposal and Nick Szabo's BitGold proposal. And make of this as you will, but Wei Dai becomes a ghost. He completely disappears. And there is no evidence of him on the internet. No photo, no voice recording, nothing. In fact, many of us always see this photo of Wei Dai. That's not Wei Dai. In fact, you can't find any photo of the real Wei Dai. Then in 2001, a man named Graham Cohen codes BitTorrent in his apartment. And this is yet another B system. BitGold, B-Money, and now BitTorrent. Graham is able to prove that millions of strangers can coordinate globally. So he solves peer-to-peer, but at scale, using nodes. This is brick 10. Bitcoin is very similar to BitTorrent, but adding a money layer. The torch is eventually passed off to a Caltech genius and cypherpunk named Hal Finney. And in 2004, he takes Nick Szabo's BitGold and builds a working prototype called RPOW, standing for Reusable Proofs of Work. It was a digital cash system, but with a bearer asset. It had fungible tokens. So these tokens were interchangeable. They were all equal in value. But the problem was that Hal Finney's system still needed a trusted server. This was brick 11. Excruciatingly close, but still just a working prototype. Then, barely over 2 months after Satoshi Nakamoto releases the Bitcoin white paper on Halloween of 2008, he mines the Genesis block on January 3, 2009, and 3 days later, Hal Finney tweets, running Bitcoin. Satoshi Nakamoto and Hal Finney quickly become pen pals. Hal Finney was the first person to realize that Satoshi's Bitcoin solved everything. It was genius. And so he was the first person to download the code, and he was the first person to download a node. And in a moment that now feels like destiny, Satoshi sends Hal Finney the first Bitcoin transaction ever. He sends him 10 Bitcoin. Hal Finney unfortunately died of ALS on August 28, 2014. waiting for a future that he helped build. His final message to the world was, "Wake me when Bitcoin wins." But up until the end, Hal was always working. He was completely paralyzed, yet he was coding every day with his eyes. Ultimately, Bitcoin contained two fixes that no one before Satoshi Nakamoto was ever able to solve. First is Satoshi's true invention, and that's the difficulty adjustment. This became the heartbeat of Bitcoin that keeps it stable and secure, so that no matter how much or little energy, no matter how many or how few miners work on Bitcoin, it keeps its average pace of 10 minutes per block. And second was a game theory singularity, where the chain with the most work became the truth. This truth turns every potential attacker of Bitcoin into a defender. It simply makes trying to cheat the system more expensive than being honest. And that's it. Those two changes are what built Satoshi's brick oven, where he could cook and bake all of the other prior bricks from all these amazing cryptographers and cypherpunks. And then, just like that, Satoshi vanishes. On April 26, 2011, he emailed, "I've moved on to other things." He leaves us as an orphan on purpose, because only someone with no parent, with no CEO, and no country can ever be shut down. So yes, Satoshi deserves every ounce of credit he gets, but let's not forget the 50 years of the cryptographers and cypherpunks who came before him, who were all also trying to solve perfect money. And for that reason, they are all Satoshi. And now we are all Satoshi.
Yeah, I'm not surprised I wasn't asked why I'm convinced Craig is Satoshi. I posted on Reddit. He signed in my presence using the private key from block number one, the very first mined Bitcoin block, on a computer that I'm convinced had not been tampered with, on software I'm convinced that had not been tampered with, a message of my choosing. And so that kind of sealed the deal for me, convincing me that he does have that private key. My interactions with him feel like this is the inventor of Bitcoin. I remind everybody he is human. I'm sure he makes mistakes like we all do. I'm sure he's made some mistakes in the past. And he wants his privacy. So I'm going to draw a line. If you ask me questions about this, I draw the line at, I will explain why I'm convinced. I will not go into personal details of the discussion that I had with him. I do think Craig is Satoshi. I met with him in London. He fits the kind of person that I was interacting with way back in 2010, and he provided some cryptographic proof using the private key from the very first Bitcoin block to show that he possessed that key. So although it's impossible to prove something like that 100%, I think for me, he's proved it beyond a reasonable doubt.
Our next speaker, John Matonis, was a huge name when I got into Bitcoin in 2013, and boy, a lot of impressive stuff. I had no idea. I'm not going to read it all to you. Wait, and is John here? Oh, right there in front. All right, John, I'll just let him have some more time. All right, John Matonis.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, what a high-quality conference. Thanks to the organizers for inviting nChain. I'm John Matonis. I'm the Vice President of Corporate Strategy at nChain. And nChain stands for Radical On-Chain Scaling Solutions. nChain stands for creation of smart contracts using Bitcoin native scripting, which is, by the way, Turing complete. And Nchain also stands for microarchitecture modular software, so not monolithic software. You may also remember my name from a year ago when I wrote a blog post called How I Met Satoshi. It was on medium.com. Received a lot of views, so I thank you all for reading that. I want to do something today that's a little bit unusual for a Bitcoin conference. In fact, I don't think it's ever been done before at a Bitcoin conference. I want to donate and turn over the remainder of my speaking time to a colleague of mine from Nchain. He is the legend from Sydney, Australia. He is Mr. Bitcoin Dundee, Craig Wright.
Any idea on who Satoshi is?
I don't think it's the guy from Australia, Craig Wright. I don't think it's.
Well,
However,
sorry, interrupt. No, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
You know what's weird about him? He appeared out of nowhere, and he somehow got himself, I don't know, gosh, this must have been about 10 years ago, up onto a stage at a crypto conference, and no one had heard of the guy. And he ends up on stage, and he's up there with some of the world's great cryptographers like Adam Beck, and no one had ever heard of the guy. And I know people who were in the audience who had this experience, and he's up there holding his own with these world famous cryptographers. And then, but everyone was wondering who, but then the guy gave himself away. He said, well, I have a Honeywell XYZ supercomputer. And everyone knew that had to be a lie because there's like 90 of them ever made, and they know that the NSA has 6, and they know that the IBM has 4, and they know that Stanford has 2, and they know where they all are. It's 5 got sent to Russia. No, they know where they all are, and no way this guy has this Honeywell, that he claimed.
Bitcoin is a commodity for the simple fact that money is a commodity. Obviously, unfortunately, not many people seem to have knowledge of assembly code or forth or anything like that anymore. And I listened to one of Nick's earlier talks, and he was talking about the limitations. But in machine code, there's none of these limitations. And in fact, we have a rather rich instruction set in Bitcoin. It's just not well defined yet. But no one seems to realize that forth actually does loop. You have to use a separate control stack. It's not like a lot of code forms where you actually have a single stack. Forth and forth-like languages use a dual stack architecture. So everything that we're talking about in derived contracts can actually be done directly in Bitcoin and the Bitcoin protocol. It's just going to take time for people to understand it.
Since you mentioned Nick, then I'm going to allow him to respond to that. You need your microphone though, sweet, or the water.
No, I have not heard that opinion before. I've never heard anybody call the Bitcoin script Turing complete, and I don't believe that's accurate.
He just said you're wrong.
The difference is the script itself isn't. What you can do is you have in forth a control loop. So the looping function is separate to the actual loop, the script itself.
Yeah, I mean that's an esoteric thing. If it's not Turing complete, then it's not a general purpose language like Ethereum, regardless of
But that would assume that the only way of actually writing code would be to do it directly in a script that runs on the machine.
Okay, so do you have another option?
Well, this would be a good topic for you to write a paper on, because that's certainly an unconventional view you have.
Well, a few months later, there was someone over in Australia who went by to see him and came out and said, I visited this guy, Craig Wright, in his building. And sure enough, in his basement, he has one of these 90 Honeywell machines. But I think, so it is funny. There is some evidence, but I don't think he's really Satoshi.
Everybody knows who was involved back then. In history,
right.
Google,
right?
You know, got Dr. Adam Back. I mean, Craig Wright was there. A whole bunch of people were there. Who is Satoshi? Well, that's the author of the fucking white paper. I don't know if they flipped a coin, drew straws to say who writes it. But if you want to know which one it was, run some authoring software against it, because everybody involved, especially Dr. Beck, had written dozens of technical papers. Let me give you some clues. In Satoshi's white paper, every word that has dual spellings for American and British English is British.
It's all British, yeah.
It's all British. Every sentence is followed by 2 spaces. Now that's a minority choice in most papers, but 2 spaces. Now there are only 2 of the accused who were British, and only one of those has 2 spaces in every one of his papers. Figure it out, people. It'll take you 15 minutes. But he doesn't want to be known. I'm not going to name him.